I was reading a story the other day about a man who went to a reader. He was having some problems, and he kept having this dream. And he was out in the desert, and there were these two teepees. And every time he had the dream, he was really puzzled. So he went to this reader, and after doing some talking about his life, she says, "Oh, I think I know what that means. You're too tense." So I think with the present, what's going on right now, we are all a little too tense, wouldn't you say? We've got 2 more days. 2 more days. And if you can hang in there just a little bit longer, that 2 days will go by quickly, and hopefully we'll be on a new normal. I was going to say back to normal, but I don't know what that is. So we'll be in a new normal. So I want to read to you this morning as I was coming here. You know, Spirit is always speaking to us. All we have to do is pay attention. And on the radio, the gentleman on the radio talked about the elections and the tension in the air and the disagreements and the concerns and the worries and the things that are being said. And he said, "I want to remind you of Romans 8:38. So I couldn't wait to get here and share this with you. I shared it this morning in our metaphysical Bible interpretation class. "For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in creation will be able to separate us from the love of God." So it doesn't matter what's going on in the political world, locally, nationally, it doesn't matter. Nothing and no one can separate us from the truth. From the truth. We see a lot of mudslinging, a lot of hate mongering, a lot of backstabbing. I know you've heard it, I have, for months. And I get all tensed up. And then we get in these conversations, even with family and friends, where we have arguments and fights. It's so deep that even in our congregation, there are heated debates occasionally. In fact, one congregant recently, just the other day, without knowing I was going to talk about this at all, sent me an email. She writes, "I was wondering if you could touch on something that is happening right now and having a major impact on our lives, the election. Most people are upset, angry, and just plain frustrated. Even when I walk into meetings at church, I can feel a difference, and I hear the conversations. I've heard that friendships have been severed, and people are actually getting divorces over these politics. What people don't seem to remember is that words can't be unspoken, feelings can't be unhurt, relationships can't always be mended, and we are still who we were before the election started. Many have lost sight of what is really important. People are judging others based on their political persuasion. Wednesday, we will have a new president. Some of us will be happy, some of us won't. But have we forgotten how valuable relationships are and that we need to respect each other regardless of our differences? I wish that someone would just take a few minutes to remind everyone why they came to Unity, a place where diversity is praised and peace and harmony are the rewards. Because I believe that many of us are not living that today. Thank you for listening." And she signs it, "Namaste." I asked her permission to share this, and I told her I was not going to give her name, but I will tell you this. This was one of the most profound emails I've ever received since I've been a minister, because it touches on something that's near and dear to all of our hearts today. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on. We're all tense about this. We're all frustrated. And we hear and we see these stones being thrown. It reminds me of a story I heard a long time ago about a king who was so self-centered and narcissistic and so selfish that he didn't want anybody else to have a throne. He wanted all the thrones. So he sent his people out all over the countryside to collect every throne, steal them, whatever they had to do. He wanted a throne, every throne. Now this king lived in a beautiful castle surrounded by glass. And he had so many thrones that one day his whole castle came toppling down. The moral to that story is, people who live in glass houses shouldn't stow thrones. So, how many of us are living in, how many of us today are living in glass houses, where we decide this one is wrong and that one's right, and we're not looking within ourselves, because that's where the truth is. When we go to the polls on Tuesday, and I hope you're all planning to go to the polls, when we go, vote your conscience. Go within. God needs us to shine its light, like Millie's saying. God needs us to shine the light. And Scripture says, let your light so shine among men, meaning all people, that they will see your good works and glorify the Father in heaven, your higher consciousness. It doesn't matter what side they sit on or whether they even believe what you believe, they will see who you are. So the power for this month is elimination or release. And I've been sharing with you when I speak every month, Charles Fillmore's 12 Powers of Man, and this power for the month of November is release. The disciple representing release is Thaddeus. The location is in the abdominal region, and the color vibration is russet, one of the beautiful colors of fall. When something is bothering you, when you're being attacked or you feel personally upset about something, when you're tense, like the last few months and the upcoming election, don't you feel that right around in here kind of aching or hurting? When you've overeaten, you've stuffed yourself, you get that feeling of discomfort, right? And the only way to relieve that mental experience, the same as with the physical, is to let something go. Let it go. So how do you do that? I've chosen today to focus on one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's in Genesis 37 through the 50th chapter. And you know this story. It's the story of Joseph and his brothers. Now, this man clearly demonstrated the power of letting go. Letting go. A few weeks ago, Duke said, "You stole from me, you lied on me, I wish you well." Joseph had that down. His brothers lied on him. They stole his birthright. They sent him out as if he was nothing. They put him in a hole, a pit, because they were jealous of him. And Joseph had this gift, and his gift was interpreting dreams. So Joseph didn't let anything stop him from using the gifts that God gave him, no matter what his circumstances were. Even in prison in Egypt, and even when Potiphar's wife lied and said he flirted with her, and Potiphar had him thrown in jail, he still didn't waver from his faith. He let go of all those negative things that people said about him, that his brothers did to him, and he just continued to use the gifts that God gave him. Eventually, by doing so, Joseph emerged as governor of the kingdom. But he did it by interpreting dreams, which was his gift. What's your gift? And how are you using it? Are you allowing someone or something to stop you from using your gift? That's what you're here for, to use your gifts, no matter what's going on around you. As a result, as the story goes, Joseph successfully interpreted a dream for King Pharaoh and was released from prison and made governor because the dream came true. King Pharaoh was advised, based on his dream, to save up all the grain, take good care of all the cows, and make sure they were well fed, and that there would be 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty, and that his kingdom would be the only one that had all they needed to survive, and all the rest of the kingdoms would be coming to him, to the king, for help. Lo and behold, it happened that the famine occurred, and Joseph's brothers showed up at the behest of their father to ask for help, for food. They were starving. Joseph recognized them, but they had no idea who he was. He knew his ego wanted to do something, wanted to strike out, wanted to hurt them, wanted to pay them back for what they did, wanted revenge. But his true self, his Christ nature said, no, that's not the right thing to do. Send them away and have them bring back your brother. Then he sends them away again. They come back to bring back the father. I'm paraphrasing and skipping forward. I hope you'll look at this scripture for yourself, because it's about us, as is the whole textbook of the Bible. It's about the evolution of human consciousness, and Genesis is our beginning, our infancy. And these stories are about how we live our lives for the betterment of the kingdom. It's how we show up at the polls on Tuesday for the highest and best of all concerned. And so the story has so much meaning today because it's a story about rising above circumstances. It's a story about forgiveness. It's a story about unconditional love. At the end of the story, toward the end of the story, when Joseph saved his whole family from the famine, invited them in, gave them everything, got a good place for them. The king loved them because they were Joseph's family. They asked, how could you be so nice to us after all we did to you? The most profound statement in that whole story is this: you meant it for bad, but my God meant it for good. You meant it for bad, but my God meant it for good. So Joseph demonstrated how we can release and let go of those things that no longer serve our highest and best. Old thoughts, old ways of thinking, old beliefs, we can let go. That's what this power is about, the power of elimination. Duke offered last week that if any of you have missed any of this 6-week series, and this is the last of the series that we've been doing, the art of living together, the art of living together. How do we live together? By seeing ourselves in each other. As the congregant who wrote that email to me ended, namaste, a Sanskrit word for I behold the Christ in you. The Christ in me, the good in me, sees the good in you. No matter how people may show up on the outside, there is good in everyone. Marianne Williamson said, the universe is self-correcting. It provides us in the present opportunities to heal the past. In the opening of, if you turn to your front of your bulletin, you'll see the statement of affirmation toward the middle of the page. That's one of my favorites. The freedom of spirit is my releasing power. I now release everything and everyone no longer part of the divine plan for my life. That's what Joseph did. Now, that's not saying I don't want you in my life, I don't love you anymore. That's not like that at all. It's I'm no longer attached to any outcome in our relationship. I accept you as you are. I accept me as I am. And it is what it is. It is what it is. You may think people are doing you harm. Even some of the things we see on television and hear on the radio these days sound very negative and harmful, but it may turn out to be our best and highest good. So you also should have, I don't know if you have this, but in your bulletin, I don't know if you got the How to Vote for God. Did you get that? It's amazing when you get on a track and things come to you. But 2 weeks ago, when I thought about what I would talk about today, I got this in an email from one of my fellow ministers in Tennessee. How to Vote for God by Eric Butterworth. Now, Eric Butterworth is the author of many books we've studied here. Discover the Power Within You, Spiritual Economics, and so forth. He was Unity Minister in New York at the Lincoln Center for many years, and he passed away not too many years ago. I don't know when this was written. I did some research, and I found that Eric didn't like to date things because he felt people would look at the date and think, oh, this isn't appropriate, or it's not pertinent, it's not relative. What got me is how relative this really is. The national election of a president is upon us. The painfully long campaign with politicians pointing with pride and viewing with alarm is drawing finally to a close. The voice of the people will soon speak. You need to remember that statement. The voice of the people will soon speak. Who are the people? In our preamble, it says, we, the people. Did you know that the word vote is related to vow and devoted, both of which come from the Latin votum, which means a vow or prayer? Thus, in a classical sense, voting is praying, your part in the spiritual process by which growth and change may bless the nation. Imagine we're all part of this spiritual process that's taking place. It might look different on the outside, but there is a huge spiritual movement going on across this nation, and people all over the world are paying attention. Eric goes on to say, religious leaders often attempt to influence the vote of their followers. Some go so far as to proclaim that God's will for the nation is the election of a particular candidate or party. But this is a perversion of the democratic process which says, the will of God is the will of the people. You can vote for God by voting your conscience with conviction and then having faith that the outcome will have formed through a spiritual process. Faith. Faith. Just like the story of Joseph, he demonstrated enormous faith in the face of unbelievable obstacles. Thus, a part of the vote should be a vow to accept the result as the outworking of that which is highest and best for all concerned at this time. There should be no bitterness or fear by those who have lost. On the contrary, there should be a rejoicing that democracy has worked its miracle and all things have worked together for good. I have been asked, should one pray for the outcome of an election? I say, let your prayer be for guidance in your personal vote and for an air of freedom and responsibility throughout the land. Then trust the process. Let the divine amalgam manifest the leadership and ideals that are right for this period of history. The nation is always bigger than its leaders. If you don't believe that, look at our history. Look how far we've come. For one of the youngest nations in the world, we're always bigger than our leaders. Have faith in the shaping influence of this country's historical destiny and in the divine order process. The moving of the spirit of guidance through the minds of voters is the great election day miracle. The true consent of the governed is to let God work its perfect miracle on Tuesday, November 8th. Your vote in the awareness of prayerful guidance will be your vote for God. Then, no matter what the outcome, call it good, in faith that the miracle will continue by lifting the elected leaders to the heights of statesmanship. Now, I know we've all been tense. We've heard all this stuff. Our minds are going in all kinds of directions. We're concerned about our party, this side or that side. But I believe what Reverend Eric said was so profound for today. Truth will win out. Love conquers all. Scripture says, love your enemies. So who are our enemies? Our error thinking. negative thoughts that we hold on to about something or someone, those are our enemies. So how about lifting them up? Whichever side you're on, whichever party you're voting for, whichever president or congressman or governor or whatever you're voting for, how about lifting up both of the contenders in consciousness, shining the light on them? God needs us to shine its light. Taking a page from Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities, he was speaking about our election too. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. How did he know? It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. And we've seen some foolishness, have we not? It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was a winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. So when we take a look back through time, we see that this is nothing new. And even in our elections over the past however many years, there's always been strife. But not falling out with your loved ones and getting divorces. I think the AA group has it right. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change those things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. By voicing your vote, you are exercising your right to be heard. Truth is the light. So, what do you think about all this turmoil that's going on? Dr. King, in his speech, I Have a Dream, talked about, in a time when America was in great turmoil, this idea, the ideology of this country, this freedom of which we speak. He said that one day we would all be able to stand together and sing in those great words, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring, let freedom ring." You are free. There are many people around the world that don't enjoy our freedoms. We should be thanking our forefathers and our foremothers and God every day. Not falling out with each other because we disagree. Respecting others' differences. Loving each other unconditionally. Forgetting that which is past. Moving toward the mark of the truth. Every moment, we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. We create our experience by what we choose to think, feel, and believe. We are co-creators with the universe, with spirit, with God, with the great one, the higher power, whatever name you call it. By shrugging off the baggage of the past, and that means the last few months, and anything else you're holding on to, we awaken to the possibility of the present. And where do we live? Only in the present. So I invite you now to think about this. Think about the power that you have to let your light shine on Tuesday and after Tuesday. To love and respect other people that don't agree with you. To hold them up to the light knowing that they are also God's whole and perfect children wherever they are. To live the truth we know in unity. That there is one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. God the good, omnipotent. Think about that as we move into meditation.